You know, when you watch a baby sleep, you can't help but wonder what's going on in that little head. Well, it turns out it might be more than just dreams of milk and mobiles. Their sleep might actually be holding some pretty incredible clues about their future development. And some fascinating new research is just starting to figure out what those clues are.
So, that brings us to the big question. Can a baby's sleep actually predict their future? It sounds like something out of a movie, right? But it's a very real question scientists are digging into. Could the way an infant sleeps, how long, how easily they drift off, give us a sneak peek into their developmental path years later?
And that's exactly what we're going to get into today. Researchers are looking for these early clues in a place you might not expect, the crib. We're going to dive into some new studies that are finding a really interesting link between a baby's sleep habits and certain developmental traits that might show up later, including those associated with autism.
Now, this isn't just a hunch or some small-time observation. The search for these answers is being led by two massive, long-term scientific studies that have been following thousands of kids for years. So let's take a look at the heavy hitters doing this work.
Okay, so first up, we've got the Barwan infant study out of Australia, which followed more than 1,000 babies. Then, over in the US, you have the Candle study with another 1,100 infants. The key thing here is that both of these are the real deal, super robust, long-term projects. And that means the data they're working with is incredibly powerful.
So where does the story begin? Well, it starts really early. The very first clues in this mystery started popping up when the babies in that Australian study were just 6 months old.
And the first piece of evidence is a number, negative 23.3 minutes. Now, by itself, that doesn't really tell us much. It's just a number. But in the world of this research, it's actually a huge signal. So, what on earth does it mean?
Well, here's what it means. The study found that at just 6 months old, the babies who, years down the road, were diagnosed with autism were sleeping, on average, just about 23 minutes less each night compared to the other babies in the study.
And here's where it gets really interesting. 23 minutes might not sound like a lot, but look at how it scales. The researchers figured out that for every extra hour of sleep a baby got at night at 6 months old, the odds of a later autism diagnosis dropped by 22%. That is a really significant statistical connection.
But of course, the story doesn't stop at 6 months. As the babies hit their first birthday, the clues actually started to change. The picture got a little more complicated, and some new and different factors started to emerge.
By 1 year old, the total amount of sleep a baby got wasn't the main thing anymore. Instead, other patterns came into focus. The big one was something called sleep latency, which is just the scientific way of saying how long it takes to fall asleep. And then, that other study in the US found another clue, how often a baby was waking up during the night.
And this is exactly why having two separate, big studies is so amazing. Because in Australia, the big clue was that it was taking longer for some babies to fall asleep. At the same time, over in the US, the Candle study found that waking up more often at 12 months was linked to higher autism screening scores later. So you've got different clues, but they're both pointing to the same thing: challenges with sleep.
Okay, so that brings us to our next clue, our next number from that Australian study. This time, it's positive 7.7%. And again, it might seem small, but it's another really important piece of this whole puzzle.
So let's break that down. For an average 12-month-old, a 25% increase in the time it takes to fall asleep is only about 4.5 minutes. Just 4.5 minutes. But that tiny delay was linked to a 7.7% higher odds of an eventual autism diagnosis. It's wild that such a small difference could have a measurable statistical link.
So we've got clues at 6 months, and we have different clues showing up at 12 months. So what does this all mean when you put it all together? It's time to connect the dots and see what this whole investigation is really telling us.
Well, we don't have to guess. The researchers themselves put it pretty bluntly. This quote from the Barwan study sums it up perfectly. It says that parent-reported infant sleep challenges correlate with more autism characteristics and autism DSM-5 diagnoses. The connection is there, it's consistent. Okay, listen up, because this next part is, without a doubt, the single most important thing to understand from all of this. What we're talking about here is a correlation, not causation. I'm going to say that again. Correlation, not causation. This is so important. These sleep patterns do not cause autism, not at all. Think of them more like an early indicator, a flag that might appear alongside the neurodevelopmental differences that are a part of it.
So let's just do a quick recap of the clues we found. At 6 months old, the indicator was shorter sleep at night. Then, by 12 months, it changed to taking longer to fall asleep, and in the other study, waking up more often. But, and I seriously can't stress this enough, this is all about statistical links across large groups of people. This is not some kind of diagnostic checklist for parents to use at home.
So that leads us to the really big question, right? If you can't use this to diagnose, then why does this research even matter? What's the point? Well, the answer is all about making a shift from just finding clues to actually providing better care.
The whole point of this isn't to make parents anxious or to try and diagnose a baby from their crib. Absolutely not. The real value here is that it helps us understand the earliest signs of different developmental paths. And when we understand that, we can get support to the kids and families who need it way, way sooner.
And this really lays out what that can look like. First, you identify these kinds of early potential risk factors. That then allows healthcare providers to offer closer monitoring for some kids. And that in turn opens the door to getting families access to early support and resources right when it can do the most good.
And that's the whole ballgame. That's the crucial point. The reason we look for these clues is to help build better pathways so that kids can get the support they need to absolutely thrive. It's about honoring their unique journey and giving them the best possible start.
Which really leaves us with a pretty incredible thought to chew on. Could it be that learning to understand a child's earliest, most basic rhythms, even the rhythm of their sleep, is one of the most important keys to supporting their entire unique developmental journey? It's a powerful idea, and the science is just getting started.